We go live. All right, I think we're live. This is Armin Navabi from Atheist Republic, and we are with
James Miller. I'm the author of A Better 10 Commandments, A Guide to Living Life with and on Purpose. I'm also a medevac pilot, and that's kind of given me a bit of perspective on life and death, and decided to write a book about it.
All right, so tell us what's this book about? It sounds just from hearing the title, it seems like that when people accuse atheists of turning atheism into a religion,
Right.
So do you think like just the title kind of maybe people will be like, what are we doing here? This is an
Right.
atheist author trying to introduce his own religion to people. What's going on here?
Yeah, so I would say that it's kind of it's a compilation. It's a blending of all of humanity's wisdom. And so I've tried to take, and I've been studying and reading history, science, philosophy, religious texts, and I've tried to put it all into like one simple framework, which is, it could be taken as hubris, but it could also just be an attempt to, figure out what's important in life. And this is my answer.
All right, but why are you calling it the 10 Commandment though?
Right. So it's a bit ironic because ethics is such
your microphone is hitting your
okay.
color. So yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah. So it's complex, just like everything is in life, and so you always have these kind of opposing principles at work. Left, right, up, down, black, white, on, off, life, death. And so I think we always struggle to find this happy medium. And so saying that something is a commandment, I'm actually more of a Buddhist in that sense, where we try, we have to hold ourselves to a standard, although we know that we're never going to achieve it.
All right. So before I go into challenging you a little bit, tell us a little bit about the book. What did you write about, and why would people be interested in getting it?
Absolutely. So the first quarter of the book is basically an atheistic manifesto. It's a statement of all the dogmas that tend to stick, and they've stuck for thousands and thousands of years. There are certain ethical and spiritual principles that they've been taken out of context. And so I try to just put everything in an empirical form and simplify it, because philosophy and ethics, you can spend an entire lifetime, studying one field of inquiry. And I've tried to take the kind of a back up and take a look at the forest for the trees, as it were, rather than what most people tend to do is we get lost in the minutia rather than looking at the big picture. So it's kind of a macroscopic view.
Can you give an example to make it clear what you're talking about?
Sure. So like this, to take like symbology or what the Bible or what every religion is trying to say, we're always battling between, let's say something like deontology and utilitarianism. And so the 10 Commandments are a form of deontology. You always do this. Whereas a consequentialist would say, well, it's what the results that matter. And either of those two philosophies kind of contradict each other. And kind of every form of philosophy does that in some sense. Just like in politics, you have left versus right. You have that same thing in religions.
So is your book about principles or consequences? And if it's about are you a consequentialist or a principalist? I'm
actually in between. One of my favorite books, The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt, is that's where happiness lies. It's like the final sentence in his book. That's his conclusion, is that you have to find the balancing point between two opposing principles. And that's why everyone struggles and interminably argues about what the right answer is, because there's never one right answer all the time.
Okay, but so your book, I assume that if I open your book, I'm going to see a list of 10 commandments. Am I not going to see a list of 10 advices? Because it does sound like you are giving definite answers to life, but just based on the title, should I not?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's 10 empirical rules that science, basically, they've been touted by religious people, and now they've been corroborated by modern science. And so in the most simplistic form, it's 10 rules that we know work.
Wait, I think you're giving religion too much credit for even assuming that they have been trying to come up with rules that were
Right.
that were
That's the
that,
ultimate goal, right?
that was the goal was for
Right.
humanity consider. It doesn't seem like that was the purpose of it, but
Right. Yeah, and I didn't intend to mean that. I would say that humanists and some religions like Buddhism is completely empirical, the very oldest forms of it, like the polycanon. But now it's been kind of molded into Hinduism, and it's taken on a
Isn't Buddhism also kind of bullshit? Like, I mean, it's maybe less. I mean, there. What I see in Buddhism and like some Mayan religion and some Zoroastrian religion is that they discovered something. They observe nature a lot, and they discovered
right,
something about it. And for example, they looked at the stars and they realized that they move in some certain way, or they looked at our minds and they realized that if we do meditate like this is going to happen. So they
right,
discovered some things that were true,
right.
and they used that knowledge that they had to convince other people that they were in a position to claim some other things that were absolute horseshit.
Hogwash, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So basically, like the Mayans were like, "Hey, look, at this time, the stars are gonna do this," and when they do, like, okay, these people must be coming from God. Okay, so also human sacrifice.
right,
And the Buddhists were like, they observe the mind and like, okay, if we meditate, this is gonna happen. We're gonna notice our consciousness and all that stuff. We're gonna have some
right,
more awareness, and also karma,
right,
also reincarnation, all that
right,
bullshit, right?
right,
So I don't. I mean, when people find when religions are given credit for discovering things, I don't. I don't think they deserve that credit. I think
right.
without religion, those things would have been discovered. In fact, religion
Kind of
deserves blame because they
right,
misuse those knowledge for
right, for
deluding
power
people.
and control, or
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And so I'm trying to do what, what Sam Harris says. He says, we like to try and pull the esoteric diamond from the proverbial dunghill of knowledge. That there is a diamond in religious texts. It's just finding the needle in the haystack. And I think most people do this on their own accord. They cherry pick. And so they take the good aspects of their religious texts and hold those up, and then they just ignore all the bullshit. And so that's kind of what I try to do, the spiritual or religious element of my book, which is very minuscule, is
But
taking those pieces of
but by
knowledge.
doing that cherry picking, you're
Yeah,
see, here's the thing. When you look at religion and it has some good things and some bad things, those good things were coming from somewhere else. The religion doesn't own any responsibility for
right.
creating them. I mean, for example,
Absolutely.
if you look at the Bible and it said like, "Oh, thou shalt not kill," well, congratulations. Are you
Yeah,
fucking serious?
right.
Thousands of years
Everybody knows
before
that.
you,
Yeah.
thousands of years before you, Greek philosophers were talking about ethics in a much more detailed and nuanced way. And
Right.
we're supposed to clap when you say that thou shalt not kill,
Right.
even though in the same fucking book you tell us to kill the witches.
Right.
But the thing is that when people say like, "Oh, I looked at the Bible, I took the good parts and left the bad parts," then you're still claiming that this Bible
Right.
deserves credit for the good parts, which it doesn't.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah. And Hitchens talked about this a lot. He said it's the idea that matters.
Right.
It's whoever came up with it or discovered it is irrelevant. Even if that person is fictitious. So he talks about Socrates.
Right.
And he says, well, it doesn't really matter if Socrates existed or not. The Socratic method matters because it works.
Right.
You make a hypothesis, test the hypothesis.
Right, but by saying we took it from the Bible or the Quran, you're giving them undeserved credit. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and the things that there has to be some originality in there, and I'm not a biblical scholar, and so I'm not going to say what is and isn't original. But most of the stuff, like when you talk about those codes of conducts that predate the Bible, I mentioned those.
Right.
So like Sumerian, Babylonian, and Egyptian cultures. It's obviously the Bible's obviously an evolution of those stories.
Right. I mean, there's nothing or anything original in the Bible is horrid.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, sure is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing: why do we need to even have rules? Why can't we always assist this? Like you have a list of suggestions, right? Why
Right.
can't we always just? I mean, is it assess the situation at hand?
Right.
Always analyze the situation based on the empirical evidence that we have in the
Right.
past and see what happened if we did this, and then analyze, not have like hard rules, right? Just be like, we need to look at every situation as a unique case. We're going to look at the past. We could look at empirical evidence. We could look at peer-reviewed academic research, and we're going to figure out what's the best answer here is now, given the goal that we have.
Right.
Instead of being like, do this when this happened, do this when this happened. You know what I mean? Like,
right. We get lost in the melee of it's because it's all too relative and contradictory. I would say that the only rule you need is the Socratic method. You make a hypothesis, you test your hypothesis, and then you check the results. It's empiricism. And so the only part that people find difficult with that is you don't always know the answer. And I think that's where most people get why people have faith, is because they're afraid of what they don't know.
You want answers. People want answers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you don't always get them. And the late Stephen Hawking recently, his quote was, not only does God play dice, but sometimes you can't see the outcome. And people don't like that. They don't like not knowing, but they really haven't thought about it too deeply.
But Stephen Hawking at the end stopped using the word God because he realized, like Einstein, when Einstein used the word God, then he regretted it because then he realized
everyone takes that out of context.
People think that he's and he kept on saying, "I don't believe in your personal God." Even to this day, people think that he's a theist.
Right. But anyways, his most famous quote is taken out of context and actually used for the exact opposite way that he used it. They say God doesn't play dice, but that's not what he said.
Right. What did you mean by that? I mean, what he was talking about, he was basically talking about that the things are not based on a probability formula.
Right. Yeah. He didn't believe in quantum physics.
Right.
He was wrong.
Yeah, he was wrong.
It is probabilistic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. But give us a sense of the 10 Commandments. Like, can you give us some examples?
Sure, I could list all of them off right now.
Okay,
so the first one is be the best version of yourself. The second one is to discover serenity. The third is to love selflessly. The fourth is to practice positive reciprocity. The fifth is to find perspective. The sixth is to be grateful. The seventh is to cultivate a rational compassion. The eighth is to choose growth. The ninth is to seek balance, and the 10th is to know it's always now.
Okay, so I have a problem with some of them. The ones,
sure.
Okay, but first of all, when you say these are commandments, are these more like suggestions than commandments?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's just the title is meant to be a bit provocative, and I do want some pushback, because no one can say that they know everything. And you have to be able to take some pushback to vet your ideas. That's how we arrive at the best conclusions, is by people, pressing against you, right, and forcing your hand.
Right. So, what do you say to people that say that this title, even if it's a good book, the title is not good because it basically feeds into this this narrative that atheism is just another religion?
I try to address that in the introduction of the book, and that's that everything in the book is empirical. Every sentence that I write has been, vetted through either history or science.
Right. A lot of people have a problem with my book title as well, because my book title is "Why There Is No God."
Right.
And if you read it, it basically tells you why there is no reason for there being a God. Right.
Just like the celestial teapot.
You didn't actually prove. Well, I told them, well, actually, if you read the subtitle, it completes it, right? Like,
right.
But if I had to come up with an accurate title, then the title would be "Why We Have No Evidence for the Existence of God." So the existence of God is so unlikely that we could ignore it. That wouldn't be an interesting title, would it?
Right. In all probability, there is no God doesn't sound as good.
Yeah, if they have a problem with that, they should be like, Hitchens. His book, "His God Is Not Great."
Right.
Why people don't tell him, like, what do you mean there is no God, right? People know the title is just the title to grab your attention, and maybe when you read the entire book, this is why they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover.
Right, absolutely. And I've been, and I think everyone says that, but they don't really follow that sage advice.
Mike in our live chat, he just got a Kindle version just right now, and
he's wow, thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, and also Cool Cat, I think it was Cool Cat that asked. He wanted to know if you like Yeah, it was him or her. She wanted to know if you like Sam Harris.
Oh, I love him. I've actually been to a couple of his podcast tours recently in Boston and Phoenix. And I actually physically gave him a copy. He said he'd read it. I haven't heard back from him yet, though. So
Yeah, or
we'll see how that goes.
Richard Dawkins got a copy of my book, and he came to me and he asked me to sign it.
Oh,
And
wow.
nobody would believe me if I didn't have witnesses, because that sounds like bullshit. But I have witnesses, so
Yeah.
that's a very humble man. I mean, that was one of the most highlight days of my life for
I
Richard.
bet.
Yeah,
I bet. Yeah, actually, the Center for Inquiry and the Richard Dawkins Foundation. I went to the foundation in Washington D.C. and met Robin Blumner. She's the CEO there, and handed her a copy. And she said she'd get a copy to him, but I haven't heard from him either yet. So, so you're doing better than I have.
Oh well, well, I mean, you're doing a really good job. You self-publish your book.
Yeah.
And your book has a ton of positive, good reviews.
Yeah.
So I want to check it out. But one of your 10 commandments was love selflessly.
Right.
I think that's impossible. Everything we do is selfish, isn't it?
Right. It is. Yeah, I think, and I think that's an evolutionary trait. Is if you are less selfish than, or sorry, more selfless than selfish, then you'll die. You know, and that's kind of an evolutionary.
But it's impossible to be selfless.
No.
Here's the example I give to people. I would like, let's say they capture a soldier in war, and they're torturing him to give away the position of his fellow soldiers, right? And he dies under torture, and he doesn't give away the position. And people might say, well, that was a very selfless act, right? I'm like, no, that was completely selfish, because basically what he did, he took the pain of two situations. He basically evaluated the pain from the torture and the pain of him being responsible for giving the position of his friends away. And he decided that the pain from the torture was the lesser of the two pains. So even in that example, he was being completely selfish, which is not a bad thing, right? But I'm just saying there's not a single scenario that you could come up with that people are not acting in a selfish way. So how could people follow your commandment of love selflessly if you agree with that?
Right, and so it falls in alignment with the 9th commandment, and so they kind of all work together. And so the 9th commandment is to balance, and so you have to counteract, opposing principles. And so just like in, for example, I would use with politics, right? You can't be all left, and you can't have left without right. Like you have to have some liberal principles, and you have to have some conservative principles. But if you're for one way or the other, you're screwed. And so you're constantly striving to balance these opposing principles. And so in ethics, it's, consequentialism.
Is balance always a good thing? Because then you have the climate deniers, and you have, then you have people that believe in climate change. So should we have a balance between those two?
Right.
And then you have creationists and people that believe in evolution. Should we have a balance between those two?
No, because certain things are, are patently obvious. Like if you're alive or dead. And there's just overwhelming evidence. And I think the problem is people, they make propositions about things they don't understand. They're not willing to say 3 words, I don't know. And they just say, well, I believe this, rather than saying, well, I'll leave that to the scientific community who says this. I'll defer to an expert. And I think people are afraid of saying that. I think that's where the biggest problem
is. Where did you get the trust in experts? They say you have faith in the experts. Then why do you have any? If these scientists are telling you that this happened and that happened, but you never experimented those things yourself, so how are you deciding that these people have the authority to say those things? Given that you didn't do it yourself, this is faith. This is not. So how would you respond to that? Yeah.
Well, because it takes an example like global warming. Thermometers don't have an agenda. Like thermometers are not conscious.
Yeah, but have you went around the globe and did your test with all your different?
Of course not. Yeah.
So they're just telling you that this is what the data showed. You haven't done it, so why do you trust these people?
Because of consensus, and I know there's still a problem with that, right? There's
consensus among the priests,
right? The bandwagon bias, right? Yeah.
There's consensus among priests that Jesus came back to life.
And so the common response is the truth needs no defense. So if global temperatures are rising, it doesn't matter what you think about it.
But you don't know they're rising. They're telling you it's rising.
Well, no, you could. I mean, I could go out and do that for the rest of
Have
my
you
life.
though? Have you though? You
I
haven't.
mean, I mean, you can look at, um, you could look at satellite images. You can
Have you
look at,
though?
yeah,
I
actually,
haven't.
I actually have.
Okay,
And I fly in Alaska, and almost every glacier here is shrinking.
but that's
And
anecdotal
they say,
evidence. That's
well,
not peer reviewed. That's just your
right,
experience.
right. And so everything has to fall in alignment with everything else. But when there's consensus, then among people that are, have every right to say that, why would anyone go to climatology school to lie to you?
Because okay, I'm just playing devil's advocate, right?
Absolutely.
Because these liberals have a agenda and
Right.
against business, and they're funding research that supports their view. So
Right.
if you're a scientist and you want to get funded, therefore you will say certain things that you know that your research is going to get funded, and that's why scientists have research that says that.
Right. And
Right.
that's, science, the process of science shouldn't be corruptible, but humans are corruptible, and you always have to take everything that everyone says with a grain of salt. But, everyone's that's in that academic field I mean, their intentions are good.
Are you sure? How do you know? Have you met them?
I do know some science. A lot of my friends are scientists. I fly them around.
No, what I would say as the person that is not a scientist,
Yeah.
this is what I tell Christians. That, like, your Bible says, judge them by the fruits of their labor, right?
Right.
What look at what science has provided, right? Look at the amount of disease that is being
Right.
you know the amount of technology that we have, the people that we're sending to space, the computers that we have, the internet, the everything around you, everything is an application of the information.
Right.
So even if you are not in a position to understand what is true and what is not, you could see based on the result of their knowledge. You could look at
Right.
the priests and the imams and see what they have come up with
Right. They
for the
rape tall
past
boys.
2000
Yeah.
years. I
Yeah.
don't think they have produced anything original or new or anything that suggests
Right.
they haven't produced anything that suggests that they know something about the universe that the rest of us don't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's
But
a
if you
very
look at all
regressive
the
element.
industries and all the technology for non-scientists, technology is proof, not proof. It's, you could use Occam's razor.
Yeah.
The simplest explanation, the most simple explanation that we have for the current technology is that the people behind it have an understanding of the laws behind how the universe works.
Right.
For them to be able to produce such results.
Right.
This is for non-scientists among us.
Absolutely. And I have an example that I use for friends that that don't really believe in some of these propositions that science proposes, like such as global warming. And you just ask them, well, does your cell phone work? Is it because the same people that make cell phones, that develop cell phones, that develop the technology, are the people that are telling you that the Earth is global temperatures are rising?
It's not the same people. It's different fields.
Of course, but it's the same.
But what I would say to them, let's say we're non-scientists and there's no way for us to go and check the results of this climate scientologist, right? What
Right.
I would ask them is, why is this only an issue in the United States?
Right.
Right? Why is this not a debate among scientists or the public or the politicians in other countries? Why is everybody has to accept this? The most simple explanation for that, again, as a non-scientist, is that this has become a political issue, and that's why there's a debate
Right.
around it. It's not a science issue, right?
Right. The scientific community has consensus. So it shouldn't be up for public debate.
Right. But we do need to give this explanation. We can't tell people, I once told a Christian, like, okay, this is how, this, I was explaining to a Christian, the evolution and Big Bang theory and everything. And she told me, and she was open-minded and willing to throw everything that she believed out. Right. And she told me, yeah, but I don't know these things that you're telling me is true. Why should I believe you? it's basically the same as the priest in the church telling me these things that are true, and I don't know if they're telling the truth, right? And I was thinking,
Right.
like, yes, she's right. Why would she nobody has these things have never been explained to them. Why should she just believe me? Just why? Because I'm telling her,
Right.
right? So we can't go to people that don't know science and expect them to just accept a scientist,
Right.
right? You
Well, it's
have
just
to you have to give them these reasoning. Like, as a
right.
non-scientist, this is how you look. This is how you could look at the world. Look at the results of their work and look at the results of their work.
Right.
Look at, why should I believe climate these scientists that are saying global warming is real? We'll look at it globally, right?
Right.
And so Occam's razor again. What are the likelihood that all the scientists in the world, in Japan, in Pakistan, in China, in United States, in UK, they all got in together and they have this global conspiracy to come up with a lie, and none of them, they all agreed with each other that they're going to con them, mankind, and
Right.
lie to them about this, and they're all in it, and there's no whistleblowers, and
Right.
they all, and what are the and for what purpose exactly, right?
Right.
Uh,
Well, and
I
that's
mean,
my favorite response to that is Michael Hayden, who was the director of the CIA, and he said, "You know how hard it is to keep a secret." He says everything leaks. Like
yeah,
there can't be a conspiracy that big. It's impossible.
yeah. I mean, we're talking about United States. They couldn't even. Yeah, you're right. Actually, like some of the most embarrassing secrets of the United States, they got leaked, but they still managed to keep all the number of people that they
Right.
have to keep quiet for 9/11 to be an inside job, or for
Right.
the moon landing. Like,
Impossible.
they must have godlike capabilities to be able to keep that on
Right.
their radar. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Back to
yeah.
like
Back to your
palpable
book.
examples
Sure.
of why science and empiricism works. So the example I give in my book is the infant mortality rate. In 1990 it was 12.7 million, and in 2012 it was 6.6. And that, it's prayer didn't do that. Vaccines
Right.
and Oxfam and UNICEF did that.
Yeah.
So human actions are what actually
No,
change and make the world a better
no,
place.
but here's the response. Those humans' actions are the results of those prayers. God works in mysterious ways.
Right.
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 But then
Well,
the response to that is that his actions are so mysterious that it's very, very similar to him not existing at all.
yeah. Yeah, I like Michael Shermer has a good one where he talks about how that we're just pattern seeking animals, and we're always trying to comprehend and understand what's happening in our lives, and we suck at it.
Right.
We're a barely
By the way,
evolved.
your microphone is still hitting your
Oh,
zipper.
sorry about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's okay. Go on.
Yeah, he says that a lot of scientists say that we're a highly evolved primate, and I like to say that we're a barely evolved primate. That we're constantly seeking patterns, and we like to invent patterns where none really exists. That it's just complete.
I don't know.
It's random.
People look at the word evolve as if it means they are becoming superior in a way, but
Right.
evolved is not. I mean, people look
It's just adapting.
it's just adapting. I
Yeah.
mean, evolved. I
And
mean,
not
we
all
wouldn't be.
adaptions are good.
I mean, depends on the environment. I think
Right.
the animals that lived, before us that went extinct, before that, they were perfect for their environment.
Right.
And we would, if we go back there, we would probably wouldn't last long, right? And if they come
Absolutely.
not here, they would probably wouldn't. At this time, we probably wouldn't last. Like, so it's not like we got better
Right.
or worse. It's just we're just adapting to the current environment. I mean, when we say better, it's based on what metric are we talking about better? And then if it's based on our metric, then of course we're better because we're alive, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and so I make reference to that in the book, is that our life's obvious purpose is to survive. That's what evolution is all about. Every living creature is trying to survive. And humanity is the one species that has a possibility of attaining something higher than that, which is happiness, or I just say fulfillment.
right.
Rather than just surviving.
All right. So I'm going to go back to the chapters in your book. A lot of these
Sure.
seems like you're when I say this doesn't make sense, you agree with me, right? So it seems like these your suggestions are not really even suggestions; they're just conversation starters, right? Because one of your chapters is seek balance, and
Right.
then I said, well, you don't always have to seek balance. Some of the situations are very obviously right to one side, right? Or when I say you say love selflessly, well, you can't ever be selfless,
Right.
right? Or when you say be grateful, I mean, it's very hard for me to ask somebody in Yemen right now that has lost uh, all their family and just watched their children die in the most horrific way to be like, oh, be grateful,
Right.
be the best version of yourself right now.
Right.
They're gonna be like, go fuck yourself to me, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, um, so
It's
it
basically, I mean, really, the book is a goalpost 1,000 years in the future.
okay,
It's because I realize I've done enough world travel to realize how incredibly fortunate I am.
right,
My life is ridiculously easy compared to the vast majority of humanity's, and so
right,
this is, it's very humbling to see how a lot of other people live, and it gives you perspective to see, that, well, one, it doesn't take everything that we have in order to be fulfilled. Life can be very simplistic, but there are people that are just, this all their entire life is suffering, and so to that extent, my book is irrelevant. But one of my main thrusts, one of my main goals is to, just like you and I having this conversation in a different part of the world would be, you know dangerous, especially if we were having it in public, and 500 years ago, it would instantaneously get us killed, in
right.
most parts of the world. And so that's one of the main thrusts of the book, is to kind of turn 1,000-year problem into a 900-year one, is to just push that. So one of the quotes that I use in the book is that Martin Luther King Jr., he says that the arc of moral justice is long, but it generally bends towards justice. And so I just want to kind of have what I've discovered kind of push that ball a little bit further down the road.
But people might say this is the best. This is the Ten Commandments according to you. It might be the best version of how to live for you, but
Right.
not for me, right? What do you say to that?
And so it's a Bruce Lee quote, and that's also in the book. So take what is useful, discard what is not, add what's uniquely your own.
Right.
And there are certain things that I'm going to miss because I don't know everything.
Oh yeah,
But
but you should make this should be your sales pitch, right? This
yeah,
is going to be like, this is not the Bible. You don't have to take everything from it, right?
right,
This is just based on the experience, advice from somebody that has seen a shit ton,
yeah,
has read a shit ton, and have thought about a lot of things
right,
based on this and based on these experiences. And
yeah,
I'm just sharing with you what I think is an ideal way to go about living.
right.
And some of it might apply to you, some of it
Some of them
might
might
not,
not.
but it's worth checking out because it's not coming out of thin air. It's coming
Right,
based on a lot of experience and based on observing a lot of things, right?
right.
So
Absolutely,
and the reason why it's a better Ten Commandments is because you could edit it and take whatever you want out of it and discard the rest,
absolutely,
because the Bible tells you that this is how it is, and the Quran tells you this is how it is, and everything else is shit, and this is how it should be, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And to everyone else, the title of the book is a question. To me, it's a statement.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
absolutely. I actually thought about having a question mark in the title, but it's my book, and so it's a statement to me.
Right.
But to everyone else, it is a question.
Right. So, but okay. So, um, you mentioned that you like Buddhism, right? I do want to. I know a lot of atheists say that.
Right.
I do want atheists to stop saying that. I know Sam Harris says that a lot.
Right.
Um, and I know people say like, well, at least they're not killing anybody, or at least they're not blowing people up. Right? I like, oh wow, that's congratulations. And there's so many things that are now okay
Right.
because they're not killing people, right? A
Right.
whole ton of bullshit just became very good, like just because they're not killing people, right? I
Right.
mean, is basically bullshit. But it isn't. I mean, Buddhism it involves a lot of superstition, a lot of dogma, a lot of things and claims based on no evidence, nor I mean, it's full of that. Um, and I don't know why people give it credit. People give it credit because what? Because they live in a world where Islam and Christianity has caused so much trouble that anything that doesn't fuck people's life over to that extent all of a sudden deserves to celebration, even though it includes a lot of bullshit in there.
Yeah, I think I've spent a little bit of time in Nepal, and I've
Right.
actually done some retreats there. And I completely agree with you that there is a wrath of bullshit that's been heaped onto, like if you read the original Pali Canon of Siddhartha Gautama, it's purely empirical. Like he was just a person, and there were just certain things that he discovered.
So it wasn't
Yeah.
Buddhism then. It was somebody conducting science. What does that got to do with Buddhism?
Right. Well,
Right?
and
What?
Buddhism has evolved into and incorporated, like Hinduistic bullshit, of the karma and the rebirth and all those things have kind of like,
It was
been.
that. It was like that from the first, from to begin with. It didn't. It came out of India and Hinduism.
Well, it was. I mean, it's now it's just a blending of the two, of Hinduism and Buddhism, and but
This is kind of like when the Arab Empire became so rich, and all of a sudden they became interested in philosophy and science and poetry and all that. And people are like, "Look, Islam could be scientific."
right,
And I'm like, "Wait, what are you talking about? Which part of the science that they did came out of the Quran?"
right,
There has not. This is not Islam being. These are Arabs conducting science,
right. Well, it's
not
a Ptolemy,
Islam, not Muslims. Just
right,
because they are Muslim and conducting science, that doesn't mean Islam is pro science.
right,
They were
right,
they were doing science in spite of Islam, not because of Islam. This is
right,
what empires. This is what empires do when they get rich. When
right,
they are become so rich and they are so secure that they're not worried, they're not attacking people. They all of a sudden be like, okay, let's check out poetry and science and all that stuff right now, right?
right,
They become this is and so, doing science becomes profitable and becomes interesting, and that's what
right,
every empire does, except the Mongol Empire for some reason does once they become very very rich, right?
right.
um
Absolutely.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, and I'm saying that Christians doing science, Muslims doing science doesn't make Christianity pro science, doesn't make Islam pro science,
Right,
and Buddhists doing discovering
right,
anything about how our mind works and discovering that if you sit silently and constantly think about your awareness of your consciousness for hours and hours and hours, it's going to give you a different viewpoint about who you are. Discovering that
right. That's
doesn't
science.
that's yeah, but that doesn't make their bullshit any less of a bullshit, right?
Right.
That doesn't make, and I just think like when we say Islamic science or we say Christian science, that's giving credibility to something that doesn't deserve the credit.
Right,
And I think we do that with Buddhism as well.
right,
And I think, just say, look at the science and don't give the Buddhism the credit. That's what I think. I don't know. I mean,
right. Well, yeah, I think you would. It's kind of like, if a student, makes a mistake in a class, you blame the whole class, or if a student does well in the class, they're giving the entire class the credit, right? It's not all or nothing, and so we have to kind of. I mean, it's the process that really matters. This. And yes, maybe Siddhartha Gautama discovered something that was true, 2,000 years ago, but it doesn't, again, it doesn't really matter who saw the rainbow
what
first. It's the discovery that matters, and then trying to help other people find it for
it's
themselves.
a discovery that matters, but the problem is that when you give credit to Christianity for something a Christian happened to do, then
Right,
people don't that Christianity comes with a whole bunch of other bullshit that
right.
when you give it authority,
Yeah, huge
then
load of baggage.
yeah, it comes with a lot of baggage. By the way,
Right.
Cool Cat, which now I know is a he clarified the live chat. Thank you, Cool Cat. He's asking you, what's your take? What's your take on the use of the word spirituality, and is it exclusively theological?
Absolutely not. I think words have a cultural meaning, unfortunately, or people a certain segment of society tries to own them. And so there are certain words that, change what they mean or their social conscious. So, I mean, something, like the word fuck right now is kind of being more and more and more socially acceptable. And it's just a word now,
Right.
as it always has been. It used to just, it used to be revolting. And now it's like, oh, well, I can say that now. And so I think spirituality to a lot of people, they make it mean something to them rather than something that's empirical, which is, a spiritual, it's, for a lack of a better term, it's something that is to some extent unexplainable, I think, for a lot of people. But I don't think theism can own any word. Nobody should own a word.
But okay, so I will challenge you on that. I say,
Sure.
like, for example, they claim monopoly over ethics and morality, and they don't deserve it, right?
Right.
Because it existed way before they came up
Right.
with any rules and stuff, better versions of it.
Right.
But spirituality comes from the word spirit, comes from woo-woo bullshit and like things, supernatural stuff.
Right.
So originally it is their bullshit. It's that we are actually stealing it from them and
right. We can take it back.
No, we're not taking it back. We're
take it for ourselves.
We're taking it. Morality and ethics, we're taking it back.
Right.
But this is not something we're taking back. This is a bullshit that they came up with, and we're just stealing it from them and renaming it.
Telling them what it means.
Telling them what it means. Yeah, we get to do that. They have done this to us for thousands of years. So we're going to steal your words.
Paybacks, fair play.
Yeah. So Mike is asking, words change. So Kukai is saying words change meaning over time. Yes, they do. The thing is that if they haven't changed their meaning yet, I discourage people from using them because of the confusion and the credibility they might give to things. For example, the word God. People say, like, well, for me, God means love. For me, God means energy. Right. And I'm like, well, we have fucking words for love and energy. Can you just please use love and energy?
Right.
Because you're giving credibility to this bullshit idea that doesn't need credibility and it needs to die. Once it's dead, then we could start using it, the word God, for whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, it seems like the most vacuous word on the planet. It can mean whatever you want it to.
But no, I think it's harmful to use it when it doesn't mean a conscious creator of the universe, because we're challenging this view. But we're trying to show that more atheists are out and open. And if you're an atheist but still use the word God for other things, then you're taking away from our numbers. And there's safety in numbers. There's so we want you to stop using it and claim yourself an outright atheist and call God bullshit, so that you normalize lack of belief in God, right? So that's what I encourage people to stop using the word God. Spiritual is fine, but God, stop using it. Anyways,
I got to meet Rebecca Goldstein, Steven Pinker's partner. She's a philosopher at. She was at Princeton for a while. I don't know what she's doing right now, but there was an article that they did in, I think, Salon magazine, that they're both proud atheists. It's just like it's okay to be an atheist. It's okay to not believe in mumbo jumbo.
Yes, I mean, here's what I say: there's nothing proud for being an atheist, but there's something to be proud about if you're an open atheist. Because honestly, being an atheist, you got a very easy question right. Is there a God? Is there evidence? No. Well, I don't believe in it. So I don't think, unless you were from a brainwashed environment, then be proud for being an atheist, because you managed to get out of that cultish brainwash. But if you're an atheist without that much pressure on you, then be proud for being an open atheist, because you're contributing to normalizing atheism. But Mike had a question about your book. He already has your Kindle and he's like checking it out right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so he's asking about the 6th commandment. Be grateful. Grateful for what exactly? Can you tell us?
And I think that's purely up to the individual. There's and no matter what situation you find yourself in life, there's always a bright side. And so one of my favorite takes on this is Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he went through 4 Nazi internment camps, and he was a social psychologist. He made it through Auschwitz. And he watched people and kind of documented this entire process of the people that flourished, and the people that just survived, and the people that didn't make it at all. And the people that survived had, he found out where meaning and purpose come from, and we make it up. And that's what gratitude does as well. So like if you cultivate a sense of gratitude for the things that you do have, no matter what's happening in your life, it works. It's been scientifically validated that it improves your state of consciousness. And no matter what your circumstances are, like if you have cancer, if you're being tortured, if you have everything in the world,
Well, a lot of people that will be having a tough time and can't find ways to be happy, they might find this very easy for you to say,
right?
But they might be like, you have no idea. You're just sitting there enjoying your life. You have no idea what I'm going through.
Right. And that I quote the late Tom Petty in that one, which I know is dangerous to quote a song lyric, but the song, he says, you don't know how it feels to be me. And everyone has some sense of that, is that, you can always say that my situation is worse than somebody else's, but you can also take the flip side of that coin and say that my situation is better than this.
All right. So 2 more questions I asked because my wife is telling me that we need to leave. I'm going to... So Mark is asking, Mark, and I think there's another question from Cool Cat. I'm going to ask those 2, and then I'm going to ask you about where to find you and your book.
Perfect.
So Mark is saying, what do you think we need to change to improve the world for everyone? Well, I think that you should buy his book. That's
definitely one step. Yeah, buy your book, buy my book. That'll definitely help. But I think... one, just to make it really simple, is that bad things happen when good people stand by and do nothing. And I think we've come to a state, especially in America, of apathy. Like we've been absorbed in selfishness and just like not worrying about all the things that have been taken care of for us. And so like the example I use is that nature has no compulsion to take care of humanity or us. And so I do a lot of hiking, and I do some hunting. And so I just tell people, just walk off into the wilderness without anything, and then tell me that nature cares about you, because it doesn't. You'll be humbled really quick if you try and just survive on your own. And so I would just say, just take action. And there's certain things that everybody can do, whether it's politically, whether it's volunteering. Just pick one little thing. What does Charles Dickens say? He says that no one is useless in this world who lightens the burdens of another. And so anything that you do pushes, the human race in a positive or a negative direction. And I think it doesn't matter how big or small that action is. It just has to be something.
All right. By the way, Cool Cat said, I'm going to buy your book, James.
Thank you very much, Cool Cat.
Wow, that's impressive. He also had a question that's when you mentioned society creates a meaning, he was asking, this is the last question, by the way. Also, we have somebody from Bangladesh watching.
Hello in Bangladesh.
Hello in Bangladesh, Reshan. So he was wondering if we should replace churches with something else.
I'm actually, I want to write an I Have a Dream speech similar to, Martin Luther King's, and it would be to turn churches into community centers, which is what they're, trying to be, a place where people can, community is important, and having, social vetting of ideas. I just think that they should be involved in either community activities or politics, or, and you could pick the scale of whatever issue you wanted to address. But I think having a sense of community is a really important thing. And so I would keep churches, but just
beautiful.
Yeah. And just get rid of all the dogma and bullshit.
Yeah.
And talk about things that we can actually address.
Yeah. Hassan is saying, I also feel like atheists need more of a sense of community. That's why atheists often get involved in things like Buddhism, which can be fairly atheist-friendly communities. Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. A lot of sometimes when we build communities, people are like, "Oh, you're turning into a religion," and like, when the fuck did religion took monopoly over community?
Right.
Getting together and finding each other, all of a sudden, we're turning in religion. If
Right.
that's
So meetup.com is a religion now, apparently.
every birthday party, every sports events, everything becomes a religion.
Right.
And I understand people want to find each other, meet each other, support each other, bond with each other. Religion doesn't have a monopoly over that.
Right.
You know?
These
So
principles can operate on their own accord.
yeah, and in fact, the fact that they took monopoly over that is the fact that they took these things that exist. We always needed, you know, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of what should I do, you know, some
Yeah.
guide. And they said, we will provide that, and we are the only source of this. By spreading this myth, they give themselves a lot of authority and legitimacy.
Right.
And even atheists now, when we try to give advice or build communities or create a sense of belonging or a sense of meaning to in different ways, if you don't like it, you could try something else. When we try to provide that, people is even atheists are like, oh, it's louder like a religion. Like, no, this is what religions are trying to tell, have been trying to show, that they are the only providers of this. The good thing about not getting it from a religion is that you could try many different things. There is no right or wrong answer, and you could see what works for you, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, there is no, you know, like you say, atheist manifesto. I think you're saying
right. There is no one.
yeah, no. There's many manifestos. There could be, you know, you could you could be every. We are all different,
Yeah.
and you could take we could take your book and read it, and it might be a good suggestion. And might take other people's suggestion, but
Right.
atheists, you know, I don't think we are. Atheism is the atheism is just pointing out that something is bullshit, and that's God.
Yeah.
But what
Absolutely.
comes after that, it's up to us, and there's many different answers. What comes next? Atheism itself does not provide that, but we get to decide. As atheists, we get to decide that together or individually,
Which
right?
is how reality works.
Yeah. No, but people say like, but no, but people are saying atheism is nothing other than a lack of belief in God, and yeah, that's true. There's nothing other than that.
Right.
So, but now
don't lump religion onto us. It's
yeah, but no, but I'm saying now that we know we don't need that bullshit, we can now get together. Just because atheism is nothing other than that doesn't mean that we can't. Now that we know that we're not relying on that, doesn't mean that we have to stop getting together and discovering, well, what is the answer, or what is the answer for you or for me. And just because we get together and try to come up with a solution, that doesn't mean that we're redefining atheism. No.
Right. Atheism stays as separate.
This is now next step we're taking together.
Step one, atheism.
Yeah.
Step two,
to something else. And again, there are, again, but here's the thing: there is no right or wrong answer, but there are better and worse answers.
Right.
And
just sometimes there's a better 10 Commandments.
I mean, for example, your book could be, you know, how in Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris in his Moral Landscape, he says there could be multiple hills, right?
Yeah, the multiple high points. Yeah,
there could be multiple high points, right?
Absolutely.
As long as you feel like you're climbing, you're making progress, even if you're not on top of a hill.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to be fulfilled, not one.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, I have to go. But where can people find you? Where can people find your book? And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and ask you questions? Social media, websites, stuff like that. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Yeah, you can get the book on Amazon, Better 10 Commandments. And then all our social media channels are /a better 10. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And Facebook is probably the best. And the best way to get a hold of me is to email. It's james@abetter10.com. And I'll also be at the American Atheist Conference in Oklahoma.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'll have a table there, be selling books, and making a name for myself. If
Very nice.
yeah, that's the 28th through the 1st of March and April.
All right. Can you send me all the links to all of this so I can put it in
Absolutely.
the description? I won't be able to put it in the description right now, but
Yeah.
when I get back home, I'm gonna put it all in the description. So bear with me, guys. And people are saying thanks. Thanks for the chat, everyone. Thanks, James. Thanks. So
Well,
that's Cool Cat. Hassan is saying
thank you, Cool
thanks.
Cat. Thank you, Mike.
Hassan saying super
Thank you,
interesting.
Hassan.
Rishan, Mark, Mike. Thank you, guys. The live chat is very lively. I really like our live chat. Is the best people.
It's wonderful. Well,
But
yeah,
yeah,
I'd
it's very
love to be
global.
back. And thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, no, thank you. All right, just stay on for a second. I'm going to stop the live chat. Thank you,
All right.
guys. Stop the broadcast. Bye, guys.